Are these sort of very strident descriptions, do you think, important, necessary to shock us all into thinking that things should be happening, or are they actually alienating people from wanting to participate and change their own lives?
I think they're counterproductive, completely counterproductive, because they create what I like to call a boy who cries wolf scenario, whereby we fear everyone and say that everybody is going to die, and when it doesn't happen, people think, right, I'm not going to listen anymore. We think about Gordon Brown told us back in 2011 that we have 50 days to save the planet. Well, it's been 10 years and shock horror, I'm still here, you're still here, most people are still here. So clearly it didn't happen, and I think it alienates people from taking this seriously, because if they just tell us we're all going to die, we just know for the fact that's just not the truth, because they've been telling us that for years and it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, yeah, Judith, I'm going to go to you next. Because you have a background in psychology as well. Are these sort of, I mean, they're very memorable phrases, things like chainsaw massacre and doomsday device. But do you think there's a place for them? Or is this actually, as Sophie was saying, kind of almost buying into the language of conspiracy theorists, which, if anything, makes people feel more detached from the subject?
Well, I think if we listen to the scientists, they are actually saying that there is a crisis, Alex. A specific phrase you can argue about. And of course, when Gordon Brown was talking about 50 days, he wasn't meaning the world was going to end in 50 days. He was hoping that there would be considerable action within that 50 days. And of course, it didn't happen, which is why we're in more of a crisis now. I think there will be many people concerned about climate change, including a lot of young people and children, who will actually be very relieved by the fact that world leaders are taking the climate crisis, which it is. Global health leaders call it that. Global economists call it that. They will be relieved that it is being taken seriously and that their concerns are finding a resonance. But what they will be looking for is action to follow the rhetoric.
Now, Cameron, I'm going to come to you because, you coordinate probably one of the most unpopular groups right now in Britain. Do you think that the activism such as that carried out by Insulate Britain is winning supporters and really changing the narrative and making people realise this is a pressing subject? Or can you see that perhaps people are getting kind of fed up with not being able to get to work or take their kids to school? And if anything, it might make them feel a little bit rebellious and less inclined to listen to your message.
Thanks, Alex. I think we're not about getting support. What we're trying to do is get a platform to try and remove people like Sophie, who are climate deniers, and be able to talk about what scientists and other people like Judith, who spend their life working on this sort of thing, are telling us is coming, and what they're saying is coming. You know, scientists, I don't know what Sophie's profession is, but I'm listening to Chatham House Report, which is a group of independent scientists. And they're talking about, we're seeing incidents of the car driving around some protesters here right now. I mean, we can see the level of anger people can get to. And when there are food shortages, which will be coming in the very near future because of unstable weather, people will be fighting over the remaining bread in Tesco's. And so I think the language that's needed is only needed because media outlets haven't been talking about the severity of what's coming.
Sophie, first of all, would you consider yourself a climate denier? I think it's important that you get a right of reply on that. And secondly, do you think that, a lot of this activism and this general rhetoric, when it's so strong, is actually pitting people against each other when actually we need to come together to solve this issue?
Yeah, so firstly, no, I'm not a climate denier. I know for the fact that the climate changes, it has changed and it has always changed. Otherwise, we'd all be living under a sheet of ice right now. And secondly, Cameron, it's a good job that you don't like support because you haven't got any. But the thing is, I think it's naive and it's arrogant from people in society to think that we as Britain can really do anything significant enough to stop climate change. We just can't. But in terms of what you said, in terms of the media, pitting people against each other, I think Insular Britain have been a brilliant group who have been a shining example of making everybody, hate the fight for climate change. And, a lot of people, they're actually making people pro climate change at this rate because people just don't respect their method. And I do believe that the media and the way they're framing this is alienating people from the cause. It's not helpful.
And Judith, in terms of, we've spoken about world leaders using, shocking language. And, you've said that actually it's good to hear that they seem to now be taking this seriously. But what about when it does come to activism? How helpful is activism in getting things done? And characters such as characters such as Greta Thunberg and organisations such as Insulate Britain, or does activism sort of almost dilute public goodwill when it comes to participating in having an effect on climate change?
Well, where you're right, Alex, is that I do think that all aspects of society need to be involved in this, and different languages are needed to engage different parts of society. I think Greta Thunberg is a wonderful example of somebody who consults scientists before she speaks, and she consults the top scientists in the world. There's nothing I have heard Greta say that isn't consistent with the science. And I think she has raised the profile. But let's be clear about this. Greta is not the only young activist with a high profile. There are many Indigenous young people in other countries that are being even more affected with climate change than in Sweden, who have been speaking the truth to the UN over a couple of decades now. And I think the activist movement, there may be some aspects of it that some people are finding unpopular, but the activist movement in general has made a big difference in bringing the attention of people to the fact that there is a climate crisis.
Yeah, and Cameron, I want to go back to you, because one thing that strikes me about Insulate Britain, we all know who you are and what you do. We've seen lots of pictures on the news of, you disrupting circulation of traffic and so on and so forth, which to me seems at odds with trying to prevent emissions. But my question is, what is it that Insulate Britain wants to happen? Because you seem to sit in roads, but you haven't told anyone how to insulate their house or who's supposed to do it or how much it's going to cost and by when. So, it seems to me that you're, rather than be productive, you're being destructive, because I know who you are, but I don't really know anything else about you or what you actually want to do.
Well, Alex, you're welcome to attend any of our numerous meetings, one of which being with industry professionals every 2 weeks, where we're getting together some of the top building scientists and discussing what this looks like. The plan was created with industry professionals. It's not something ludicrous. I don't know if you've seen external wall insulation going up, but it's quite straightforward. It's for the government to discover how to finance this if they want to choose to save the 8,500 people that will die in this country from fuel poverty this winter. And that is not good enough. The government we've presented them a very thought-filled plan. And I just want to respond, if I may, to Sophie's apathetic view that humans can't avert the climate crisis. So, which is, I believe, basically what you're saying, climate change is going to happen. So let's just pretend for a minute that climate change isn't going to, we're not going to save it. But maybe if we insulated people's homes, people would be warmer, save money on fuel bills. If we were to switch to green energy, then people's lungs would be healthier because of the lack of pollution. If we had less meat, less animals would be getting slaughtered, there'd be more forests. And then it turns out scientists just made up the climate crisis to make some money. Is the world really any worse because of those steps we've taken?
Yeah, Sophie, I'll let you answer that, because I think Cameron makes a very good point there, doesn't he? The sort of measures that people are proposing we follow in order to have some sort of impact on climate change, whether you think Britain as an entity by itself can have an impact or not. I mean, it's not going to make the world worse, is it?
No, but if it's not making a significant impact on climate change that they're telling us, why on earth are we going to bother bankrupting our economy trying when China are just sitting there laughing at us? My question is, none of this stuff is free, Alex, so how the hell are you going to plan to fund it?
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.